You must understand that the empath's heart, though soft and sensitive, is not an endless well of surrender. There is a point at which the soul that has absorbed too many wounds turns inward and finds the fire hidden in its depths. I have witnessed this transformation many times, both in individuals who came to me with trembling voices and in the archetypal currents that underlie all of us. The empath in their most wounded state becomes a mirror that not only reflects the darkness of others, but also begins to integrate that darkness. When this happens consciously, when the empath awakens to the reality that they have been the silent container for every unspoken cruelty, they cease to be the gentle lamb and awaken as something far more formidable. This being has made contact with the shadow. The shadow is not merely the repository of all that is negative within us. It is the unclaimed portion of the psyche, the raw potential we repress because it doesn't fit the image we present to the world. For an empath, the shadow often appears not as their aggression but as a silent accumulation of others' pain and manipulation. They learn early that their value lies in absorbing and harmonizing the chaos around them. But in this process, they exile their assertiveness, their rightful anger, and their claim to existence. It is a grave mistake for the narcissist to assume that the empath's gentleness is a weakness. The empath's sensitivity is not a void, it is a radar tuned to the hidden vibrations of the soul. When they reach the threshold of endurance, when endless taking and giving finally burns them down to their essence, they awaken with a clarity sharper than a blade. They see through the narcissist's masks, the games of power and charm, and the endless hunger for validation. In that moment of vision, the empath stops trying to heal the unhealable and begins to reclaim their light. This reclamation is a form of alchemy. Imagine a vessel filled with poison for years, whispers of guilt, demands for perfection, and emotional manipulation. The empath has drunk it all, thinking that to love is to endure. But true love does not destroy the self. In the crucible of suffering, the empath transforms the poison into wisdom. They see that the narcissist's cruelty is not personal, it is the manifestation of a fractured soul that cannot bear its emptiness. The fed-up empath does not merely react with anger, they access a power that comes from seeing reality stripped of illusions. This is why they are more dangerous than the narcissist ever imagined. They are no longer playing the game of ego, they are standing in the raw truth of being. The narcissist thrives on control and confusion. Their strategy is built upon projecting their own shadow onto the empath, accusing them of weakness and oversensitivity because they cannot bear to see these qualities within themselves. For a time, the empath believes them, doubting their perceptions. But when the empath sees that these accusations are merely reflections of the narcissist's inner war, they step out of the battlefield altogether. They do not need to fight, for their power lies in their refusal to be defined by another's narrative. In dreams, this transformation often appears as an encounter with a wild animal or dark figure. The empath, who has always run from conflict, suddenly stands still. They no longer flee from the beast, but look into its eyes. This is the moment of integration. The beast recognizes the empath as its rightful master. They become both healer and warrior, capable of compassion but also boundaries as firm as iron. The danger of the fed-up empath is not that they become cruel or vengeful. Their danger lies in their clarity. They are no longer entangled in the narcissist's web of confusion, making them unpredictable. The narcissist cannot control someone who sees them fully, who no longer reacts to provocations, who no longer believes the story that, "You must fix me or I will break you." The empath realizes this is not love, but bondage. Once they cut the cords, the narcissist is left with their emptiness. The empath's journey is essentially heroic, the path of individuation, integrating conscious and unconscious, light and dark, to become whole. When empaths reclaim their shadow, they do not become like the narcissist. They become sovereign within themselves, no longer pawns on someone else's chessboard. This sovereignty is deeply spiritual. After years of wandering in the labyrinth of other people's emotions, the empath finds the center of their being. Here they encounter the archetype of the self, the unifying principle of the psyche. The self is both terrifying and liberating because it demands total honesty. Once you face this inner truth, you cannot be deceived again. The empath who meets their self becomes untouchable, not because they are invincible, but because they are authentic. The fed-up empath is a storm no one sees coming because they have spent their life being the quiet river, flowing around obstacles, bending but never breaking. When they awaken, their stillness turns into a force of nature. This transformation is born of countless silent moments where they swallowed their words, hid their tears, and held the world on their shoulders. When the shift happens, it is not rebellion but revelation. Consider this. The narcissist thrives because most people live in fear of their darkness. The empath has built an entire identity around being the opposite of what the narcissist represents. But when you over-identify with one side of the coin, you unconsciously invite its opposite to dominate you. The narcissist represents the empath's unclaimed fire, their capacity for saying no, for standing in uncomfortable truth. When the empath finally looks within and finds they too have a shadow, when they allow themselves to feel anger without shame, they stop being the victim. Compassion without boundaries is self-destruction. True compassion is fierce. It protects what is sacred, while recognizing that not every broken soul can be saved. The moment the empath stops abandoning themselves is when the dynamic shifts. The narcissist's weapons become useless because the empath no longer reacts. They simply stand firm. This quiet strength terrifies the narcissist more than any outburst could, because their power relies on chaos and emotional entanglement. The fed-up empath begins individuation by turning their gaze inward, asking questions long avoided. Who am I when I'm not caring for someone else? What do I truly want? Where does my pain end and someone else's begin? This awakening often comes through dreams, drowning in water that represents being submerged in others' emotions, then rising, gasping for air, and finally breathing for themselves. Freedom for the empath means learning to love without losing oneself. Boundaries are not walls but gates. They allow love to flow while keeping harm at bay. The empath realizes their worth is not measured by sacrifice, but by how fully they embody their truth. The awakened empath carries an inner light tempered by shadow. This light, born of suffering and reflection, has the power to expose the illusions narcissists depend on. The narcissist is like a creature of the night, thriving in dark corners where no one dares shine a light. But the awakened empath carries the torch of awareness, and this light is relentless. When the empath reclaims their projection of power onto others, saying, "I have power, I have choice, I have the right to exist without being drained," they liberate themselves and challenge the narcissist to face what they've always denied. The empath, once awakened, cannot be unawakened. Fear may arise, but they no longer bow to it. The empath's transformation moves them from unconscious reaction to conscious choice. They no longer define themselves by how others treat them. Their love now has roots. It doesn't bend to every demand but stands strong and steady. When the empath embodies this strength, they become a mirror in which the narcissist sees their emptiness. This detachment is not cold indifference but compassionate clarity. The empath can feel sorrow for the narcissist's pain without confusing sorrow with responsibility. They become the alchemist, transforming the leaden weight of their past into gold wisdom, resilience, and deep understanding of human nature. The fed-up empath becomes a force of nature, not destructive but transformative. They carry an energy that says, "I will no longer be diminished, drained, or play small." This energy radiates from their being, and those who cannot handle this truth will either be forced to change or fall away. The empath's final step is opening their heart fully to themselves first. They realize they cannot truly love others until they love themselves without conditions. This self-love is in alignment with the truth of existence. I am here, I am worthy, I am whole. When the empath stands in this truth, they become both healer and warrior, both giver and guardian. They are no longer merely reacting to life, they are creating it. Their danger is not in retaliation, but in evolution. They rise above old dynamics, and embody a consciousness the narcissist cannot control. The moment of awakening is both death and rebirth. Death of who they thought they were, and birth of something far greater. A self that is complete, radiant, and untouchable. The empath realizes they were never meant to be a martyr for someone else's brokenness, but to embody love that includes themselves. When the empath awakens, they free themselves not just from one narcissist, but from the entire archetype of narcissistic dynamics. They recognize manipulation everywhere and refuse to be part of that illusion. This refusal is not aggressive but absolute, the silent, unshakable power of a soul that knows its value. The empath's awakened power is built on truth and clarity. Truth does not need to manipulate, it simply is. When truth stands firm, no deception can hold its ground. The empath becomes a living embodiment of the self, the archetype of wholeness that integrates both light and dark. If you are listening to these words as an empath who has walked through this fire, know that your journey is not in vain. Every wound has been preparing you for this awakening. Do not fear your power, or shadow within its depths lies the strength you have been seeking all along. You are not weak for feeling deeply. You are strong for surviving what others could never bear. Your strength is not in fighting the darkness, but in embodying the light that cannot be extinguished. This is your gift. This is your power.